Welcome to Cloud Chat with Stephan and Matt. We've got a little different take on the podcast for this part 2 of our 2-part series of a live conversation that Matt Brown and I had with some NetApp partners describing how NetApp IT leverages the hybrid cloud. In this part 2, we'll be talking about Spot by NetApp and how NetApp IT leverages that technology to reduce the cost of putting things in the public cloud. We'll also talk about FinOps. Enjoy this session. Thanks for tuning in. All right, so then we're thinking about hybrid using a bit of both, the best of both worlds, and we talk about this. You highlighted this idea of running the business versus transforming the business. I think this is the slide you were looking for when we were looking at those two pillars and kind of pulling them into their different groups.
And again, this it's funny because this was through our own use case, right? Where should IT be spending their money? When you make it this high level simple, it's clear. We should all be spending their money where it makes sense, where we differentiate. Get all that other stuff out of the data center, make them business services that we can manage as business services from a security, from an accessibility standpoint, and focus our dollars on those things that make us more competitive, create a better customer experience, and really, I'll use your words, unlock that power of innovation.
Sure. Love it. And when we think about spanning and we think about an on-premises cloud and a true hybrid cloud, being able to go between private and public and pulling that data, do we have some thoughts or examples in this context from a NetApp IT perspective?
Many examples. So we leverage actually a company called Equinix, which is a near cloud data solution. They're kind of a cloud exchange that gives us access to many different clouds. That gives us the power from a NetApp capability to snapshot, snap mirror, even flex clone from a private cloud where our data sits to a public cloud capabilities. Everything from DevOps to analytics to data science. Now we can copy portions of our data, allow projects to exist without populating our data across multiple cloud platforms. Gives us more data control, speed in terms of being able for us to respond to business needs, and then protect the integrity of our data in the process. Both unlocking innovation, but also protecting our most valuable resources, which is in fact our data.
Fantastic. There is a bit of a view here in the Spot context as well, where we see Spot showing up, and we also see Cloud Insights. Walk us through the smart growth approach that we're highlighting here.
And so I love this picture only because having lived through all of this, one of our biggest concerns when moving to the cloud was losing visibility or starting to have to manage, if you really think about it, multiple data centers everywhere. Data center management's already hard enough, and now you have a vendor in the way. Well, what if I can make that easier? And in this construct, you can clearly see in our case, we keep our data mostly centralized. Now I have the power to replicate that data using a common platform like ONTAP. And now I can also leverage the cloud in terms of saving money in terms of the processors by leveraging Spot. I now can look at this entire thing as kind of my virtual data center. I have the visibility I need, the tools and predictability of those tools I need to move, manage, protect my data across platforms. And again, provide the governance that I need. Where's my data? Who's using it? How they're using it? Ideally understand why they're using it.
Fantastic. Love it. Yeah, the Spot capability is really cool, I think, for everybody to think about. And one of the things that comes up in conversation with our Spot team, as they help our collective customers figure out how to optimize their cloud spend, is this idea of FinOps. And you've mentioned it a couple of times in the conversation so far. And I'd love to spend 5-10 minutes on just getting our collective. My nerd brain doesn't do so well when you say finance, other than like, can I have money to buy the next thing that I want to put in a data center or to help my customer do something? So can you give us some good thoughts around where this evolved? Why did we create a new thing? Is it, well, DevOps sounded cool and that got a bunch of traction. Let's create some new thing and call it FinOps. And what are we pulling together here? Break it down for us, if you would.
Well, it's funny because, when you start talking about finance, people go, oh God, we're going to get one more thing to look at and one more person looking over our shoulder. But at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is avoid the surprises that potential unpredictability of cloud costs can cause. So how do you build that into the process? And how do you also build in the process to where I'm always looking at new technologies and make that evaluation a little bit easier? If I knew how much things are costing every single day and from a context of business use, what applications, what capabilities, I can quickly then look to other solutions to evaluate those, not just on cost, but also by capabilities. So a FinOps model is supposed to constantly run and drive and improve that visibility to what we're doing and to really understand what those costs are, not for just today's management, but for budgeting and forward-looking projections. Because we have that much visibility, it also does allow us to transform very quickly. We understand what things cost, what our capabilities are in terms of output, and understand then how a new technology could potentially help us. Again, both from a cost and capabilities perspective, things that are very important. So now we're not only moving at a fast rate of business, we have visibility to what that mechanism looks like and what each of those elements cost to be far more effective in that management of that business.
Okay, so in the interest of saying FinOps as many times as I can while we're on this slide, I think about
you get a nickel every time you say it, right? There's a royalty thing going on.
It should be. I mean, it's finances in there. But when I try to think about how am I going to make this stick in my brain, right? And I think about DevOps and this idea of we take the development teams who are isolated from the operations teams, and the operations teams were like, well, what do you need to support your application? And the developers are like, I don't know. I'm just trying to build it right now and get it to run. And when it starts to come to when they would hand over development to the operations team, things would break and fall off. Wheels would fall off the truck to some extent. I think about the Unicorn project and great descriptions of that sort of old way of thinking and how you bring development and operations together, and it starts to streamline the way things are working together, and you get all of these abilities to iterate more quickly and bring innovation from the development side into production more quickly. You get those turns. Are there analogies there in the FinOps sense? Is that why it became FinOps? I heard you say things about visibility, and I heard you say things about kind of faster making decisions around whether something should be CapEx or OpEx. Does that
not necessarily CapEx? Well, I guess yes. I mean, to some extent. So we have the visibility in almost every single one of our work streams, and I can ask for the cost right now and get a real-time view of what those things are costing. Now, there's somebody looking at that going, wow, if I was doing that workload here, it would actually be more cost effective. Or this new technology just got released. If I move that workload there, I can see the cost and do cost modeling. So let me kind of step back. DevOps today is expected to run as a service. There's no downtime, right? From an operational perspective, our challenge is to find the best service to match and manage that DevOps process, both from a cost and a capabilities perspective. So as one thing is running real time, I also need to be able to model other things real time and make changes real time, not to ever bring that service down. So not only is it driving visibility, it also allows me to both move capabilities because it's more cost effective, manage those capabilities, but also inject new technologies into the pipeline. That's really what FinOps is doing, understanding really, again, more the financial controls, but also having the flexibility of allowing new technologies to be included.
Interesting. And how did I feel like you would see DevOps in titles of people to some extent, or at least in things that I've done. And you and I have had conversations in the past around which came first, the marketing term or the actual need, or where are we? And when I think about FinOps, I'm trying to imagine, are there parallels where I'm part of the FinOps team, or where did this evolve from a NetApp perspective? How did FinOps become real inside of NetApp? Is there a FinOps czar somewhere, or like a committee was formed and we're going to FinOps some stuff, or how did this go?
It's funny. It grew out of necessity, right? My boss, our CIO, reports to our CFO. Costs needed to be predictable. To respond to that, our DevOps team, our automation teams were forced into looking at the costs and being able to reply and manage costs in a more of a forecast capability. They actually hired an MBA with somebody with some technology background, but he was really an MBA to come and really start to model our costs. Once he started to model them, he pulled in different tools to give us more visibility. We called that FinOps in our world, right?
Okay.
And it was driven from the necessity of being able to project those costs and bring predictability to our costs, but also because of the nature of running things as a service. There's new technologies coming out all the time. And so we need to model those and understand them not only from a capabilities perspective, but what did that change to our cost modeling? In our IT shop, we're expected to be in 1% variance. So we're running a very tight ship in terms of costs, and we must understand what those costs are.
So that 1% variance, you mean you need to predict your costs to within 1% of
1% a
accuracy?
quarter.
Is that what we're talking about? Per
1% a quarter. Yeah,
Okay.
1% variance a
So
quarter.
we're expecting to spend X dollars this quarter. At the beginning of the quarter, at the end of the quarter, you better be within 1% of that.
Yep.
It's not like you can just turn off developers if you're, you're at the 29th day. Yeah, a lot of us have a pre-sales capacity here. So where he's like, well, if I could just drag this one more deal across the line, I could hit my number. You don't have a lot of luxuries there. Well, I mean, I'm sure you could overspend pretty easily if you wanted to, if you needed to increase your spend, but
actually both are really hard to do.
over.
I mean, when you're talking about managing in a 3-month span, it's really, it's a very delicate thing to manage, especially at a certain size. I mean, imagine running a $6 billion company and coming in with 1% variance, given all the things we do and everything that's in constant play. FinOps is a must in today's world. We're moving very fast. We're running things as a service. That visibility is key, because every little nudge you make now can not only affect this quarter, but could affect future quarters and affect future spend.
Okay. I feel like I have a bit of a better understanding of FinOps, so I thank you for indulging my neophyte perspective here. I think one of the other things that we are challenged by in the field, with Spot in particular, but I think we talked about generally elevating conversations. But how would you even know to look for a FinOps group inside of an organization, or it maybe that FinOps is the wrong expression to use, but what sort of financial modeling are you doing around your consumption, your IT infrastructure? What would be a good way to try to get at FinOps without saying FinOps inside of an organization that may not have put a stamp on it yet?
It's usually the people who control the contracts, right? And we've taken that from procurement and embedding that into the operational model, just because it is so dynamic. And maybe even that is a hint. If everything's being run out of procurement, they don't have that dynamic capability, then that's an opportunity to get in front of them and show them maybe how they can adopt some other capabilities to offer more dynamics to the services that they offer.
That's such a different conversation than what we as engineers tend to have or think about having when we think about how many IOPS we can do, or how transparently we can move a workload into the cloud, and those things that we're usually called on to articulate in front of our customers. To think about how are you thinking about the financial modeling of this, and how they're interesting conversations to try to figure out.
Well, and let's throw some shameless plugs in here too, right? Spot helps by reducing costs, right? Cloud volumes, obviously we're using less in the cloud volumes conversation. And we just acquired a new company called Cloud Checker, which is really geared to managing or more importantly, bringing visibility of those costs so you can manage them more effectively. So NetApp has capabilities directly in line with allowing customers to take more control of those by both providing visibility and options then to actually reduce their own cost of doing business.
And it's fun to think about how you talked about introducing innovation and how you want to be able to do that in your hybrid cloud environment, and the things that you want to maybe SaaSify versus have on premises. And here we are, like, okay, so what examples of innovation might we want to take advantage of? And well, you mentioned Cloud Checker as some way to improve your instrumentation. That's a technology we might want to loop in to improve our instrumentation, to make our whole FinOps approach perhaps better instrumented or more easily optimizable. I'm making up words all over the place today. And then I think about our recent conversations around Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP, and how
Yep.
this is creating new technologies, new areas of innovation where customers can pull their data into and out of the clouds and leverage the technologies that we've discussed from an optimization perspective. So lots of cool fun in there. Anything that you wanted to highlight on this slide before we drive into the key takeaways, or Jeff, any questions on the chat? Sorry, I asked two people two different questions. Matt, anything that you want to highlight on this slide before I move on? Yeah, sure.
Well, let me wrap here. So as we started off, whether you're at in your company journey, or you're a new company or you're a mature company, how do you come somewhere in the middle and really start to balance the cost of doing business, but also balancing the cost of innovation or the capabilities of innovation? We live in very dynamic worlds. In order for any of our companies to survive, we have to be innovating, have to find that next big thing to remain competitive in the marketplace, to stay ahead, and not just in go-to-market, also creating great customer experiences to be able to respond to customers' needs as fast as possible. But costs matter. And what we're learning is that you have to have a very robust dynamic model embedded in the IT organization that runs as a service to provide the visibility and capabilities to continue to remain cost effective and serve the business needs and put the right priorities in the right places.
Perfect. Jeff, any questions in the chat that we want to ask Matt to address?
Yeah, I think it's really right in line with this conversation. Steve asked, what impact does Spot have on the NetApp Cloud, NetApp Data Fabric, message, complement, enhancement? I think, we talk a lot about the promise of the data fabric is right workload, the right place, the right time. I think that's a component of it in helping you make those decisions. But it's a great conversation, and I think Spot adds to our overall delivery.
So we adopted Spot before we bought the company, and we adopted Spot to provide the cost modeling that we needed to take more advantage of the public cloud. In our use cases, we're saving anywhere between 62 and 68% because we're doing real-time modeling. I can see these costs almost on a daily basis. And it is because of Spot and the cloud capabilities that we're leveraging more and more of cloud for our development. It really has allowed us to make cloud costs possible from our own real world use case. And Anthony and I likes to joke that we liked it so much we bought the company. And I would argue that that's fairly true. We thought that if we could benefit from this, so could our customers. And it was really made a nice addition to our overall portfolio. And things we didn't cover today, Stephan, because I know my experience in the field, and I'm sure you guys are all feeling it too, security is obviously top of mind. NetApp IT has great stories on how do you recover from ransomware attacks? How does our technology really enable that bulletproof type of recovery? I kind of wanted to throw that out there since we really didn't have a slide on security, that is a very hot topic for us right now, and one that seems to be of high interest. How do you take what NetApp does and really apply it in that ransomware process in the terms of, protecting that data, making it available, and recovering from those events as fast as possible? Love it.
Yes, and one of the things that comes up in the security context for me anyway, when I'm talking to partners is, it's wonderful. We have these great ways for a customer who owns NetApp to recover from ransomware, to prevent it, to detect it at the storage layer. Certainly, we're not trying to replace endpoint security and putting the appropriate endpoint defenses and perimeter defenses in place. But it is interesting when customers come to a partner and say, hey, I'm worried about ransomware. It's hard to say, rip out your primary storage and put in NetApp instead, right? So those become a bit of a challenging conversation if the customer is solely looking for, how do I put some sort of belt and suspenders on my security approach today. Do any of those sorts of conversations come up, or any thoughts on that aspect of security?
Well, getting into archiving specifically, I think people are looking to make investments in how can I make a more robust archiving strategy, right? And I think that is opportunities for customers to then choose the NetApp platform. In fact, I've seen many customers augment their existing environments with NetApp for that specific need. And then over time, we find ourselves growing and taking up more of their footprints. So that's my perspective there, because we do offer some very powerful tools in that space and technologies in that space. In fact, I would argue we're the best in that space.
Yeah, for sure. So try to find a peripheral workload almost and use that. Like, okay, so you're worried about ransomware. What if we put in a system that you could replicate data to or write data to, or to start building out? And we're not going to replace your primary storage, but if you're going to put a third copy someplace, we'd suggest you put it on us and then start leveraging that same system for some primary workloads over time, and then replace your on-premises. Don't make it a let's rip out all the storage conversation, but let's grab a peripheral workload.
Solve the immediate need, certain
Yes.
critical systems, and then grow from there. And we've
Love it.
seen it happen, right?
That's a really, really smart approach. What's the most critical thing? Let's put that on NetApp. Let's not rip out everything. And here's the benefits and the why. Love it. Great strategy. You're promoted to sales, Matt. I like it. Thank you for joining us for this live event. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and look forward to catching you on the next Cloud Chat with Stephan and Matt. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy this content, and visit netappit.com for details on all of the things that NetApp IT does with NetApp technology.